This is a story of the day I thought I was going to die. It was September 14th, 2012, and I was working at the US Embassy in Tunis, Tunisia. I was in a safe haven inside the embassy with 103 of my colleagues, while thousands of protesters, and within that group, a core group of attackers, had surrounded our embassy and were trying desperately to get in to kill us. Now remember, 72 hours earlier, we had lost 4 colleagues in Benghazi. We were fortunate that day. None of us died. But what was most important wasn't what we did during the crisis, but what we did before. See, we had leaders in Embassy Tunis that took security and safety very seriously. They modeled the behavior that they expected to see of us. So whether it was participating in a drill or answering the radio, we understood that we were expected to make safety our #1 priority, regardless of what our job was at the embassy. They would tolerate nothing less from us. The second thing they did is they knew us. They got to know us. They developed trust. We trusted them. They trusted us. So let me step back for a second. We started with September 11th, when we lost our 4 colleagues in Benghazi. It was a very difficult day for Embassy Tunis. We had a very close relationship with our colleagues working in Libya. We were the adjoining country. So we took that very personally, like most of the Foreign Service did, or all of the Foreign Service really. That was a very, very long night for us. We were up trying desperately to think of anything we could do to help, and unfortunately we weren't able to. On September 12th, we had a protest at the embassy. And remember, this is Tunisia a year after the Arab Spring. So we were supportive of the concept of protests, even if they were protesting against us. And while the protest was large, it went well. On September 13th, we got word via social media that there would be another protest at our embassy that Friday, the 14th. So that morning, the embassy team got together, and we talked about what we thought was going to happen, and one decision that we had to make was whether we were going to send people home that day. Now, ultimately, the decision was that we would stay put. Based on what had happened on Wednesday, we thought we would be fine. And to me, this posed quite a conflict, because as the head of logistics for the embassy, I had the largest team, and I really wanted to get them off-site if I could. So I was able to come up with a way that we could get most of my folks off-site to have them test a new capability that we had just gotten, the ability to telework. We wanted to see whether we could do that effectively. After I'd sent most of them home, the remainder of my team and I got together, and we walked around, and we took pictures of the embassy, and we played something called the what if game. This is something we had learned in our training. What if somebody wanted to hurt us? What if they came over the walls? What could they use against us? We locked up the gas pump. We remembered that we had received a delivery the day prior of almost 20,000 liters of fuel. We dispersed the vehicles on the compound, so we sent folks home with some of these cars. And then we waited. At around 11 o'clock in the morning, the protesters started to show up, and things very quickly got out of control. Many, many thousands, more than we had expected. And as they came over the wall and things quickly spiraled out of control, the Marines working at our embassy sounded what's called the duck and cover. That's the alarm telling us that we need to get someplace safe. And we all filed into the safe haven. So if you think about it, we actually had a best case scenario that day, because you had a team that had high trust. You had a team that was well trained. But initially, none of that mattered. Speaking for myself, when the fire alarms went off and I could smell smoke, and I'm in this room, and I remembered what had happened less than 72 hours earlier, my brain shut down. I remember I felt like I had tunnel vision. My legs got weak. I leaned up against the wall, and I kind of slowly sat down. And I was terrified. I was terrified. I had sent my kids to school that morning. The school was across the street from the embassy. I didn't know where they were, and their school was on fire, and there were looters. I was afraid I was going to die. I had fallen desperately in love with somebody, and I hadn't told them yet. there were a lot of things on my mind. Now, studies have shown that stress, and fear is an extreme form of stress, has the equivalent effect on your brain as a 15% drop in IQ. This is why training is so important, because you have to work from muscle memory. I knew that I had to get control of my fear. I found out that my kids had actually been sent home earlier that morning. As I was running around doing everything I did, I'd missed that piece of information that was key, so I knew they were fine. I emailed my parents, I told them I love them, and I asked them, please, should the worst happen, don't let my kids forget me. And I sent an email, and I made that person know exactly how I felt. Now, I learned an important lesson that day, and that's that you can't anticipate how you or anyone else are going to react. This is why it's so important, especially as leaders, to know the people on your team, and it's important for you as a teammate to know your teammates. This allows you to adapt in the moment. Now, my job that day, even though I was the head of logistics, my job that day was to keep Washington informed. So I was on the phone, we had an open line, because ours wasn't the only posting crisis. As we were experiencing what we were experiencing, Cairo, Sana'a, Khartoum, Islamabad, similar things. By about 10 p.m., we were able to leave the embassy. And it was immediately clear as I exited the building. And the smoke was hanging in the air and there was tear gas. Even in the dark, I could tell that things were going to change. I went home and I packed my kids' suitcases because I knew I was going to have to send them away. And in fact, they left 2 days later and we would be reunited 9 months later. That next morning, I went to the embassy, and in the light of day, I could see the extent of the devastation. But my first priority, once we made sure nothing else was on fire, literally, my first priority was putting the flag back up. It had been taken down during the attack, and the pole had been broken, so we went and got the big flag that we used for the 4th of July, and we put it up, and that was a tremendous boost to morale. This is our motor pool Friday morning. This is our motor pool Saturday morning. 110 vehicles were destroyed. That includes both personal vehicles. This is the gas tank that we had locked up. The local staff put their lives in jeopardy when they saw that they were trying to set fire to this. And one of the greatest honors of my career thus far was I was able to nominate 4 of them for heroism awards. Because had they not intervened, there's a good chance I wouldn't be standing here today to talk to you. 90% of our windows and doors were damaged. Over $18 million in damage. Now, despite the seriousness of this situation, I think it's also really important to maintain a healthy sense of humor. So in that spirit, I would like to share a career milestone with you. I'll just share it. This was while we were in the safe haven. I actually posted this as a Facebook memory last year, forgetting that I'm now friends with the ambassador. And fortunately, he's got a great sense of humor, and he's said I could use his bathroom anytime. So I've taken the lessons from this event, and I now help to train my colleagues before they go out to the field. There are 13,000 members of the Foreign Service, serving alongside 25,000 host country nationals in 276 countries and embassies and consulates. Now, in my current assignment as the Director of Crisis Management in the Office of the Secretary of State, what I always emphasize is it's important to do the work before the crisis. You can't do that during. And ultimately, crisis leadership, whether it's before, during, or after, is about communication. You must trust your team. They must trust you. You must know your people. You can't predict how they will react. You must lead by example. If you take security seriously, so will they. And this is critical because during the crisis, you have to make decisions. And those decisions can turn out to be wrong, and you can still be okay, because if your team trusts you and they believe in you, they'll just rally and keep going. You could argue that the decision to not send people home on Friday morning was the wrong decision, but it was fine because we were able to move past it. The other thing we talk about is making sure that you give everyone a job. That ensures unanimity of effort and gives people something to focus on. Now, that day, my job was communicating with Washington. Another crisis, also in September, was September 11th, 2001. On that day, my job was to make sandwiches. Rank and position doesn't matter in a crisis. In the Foreign Service, we are taught that there's no job above you, there's no job beneath you. You do what you need to do to accomplish the job. You have to remember that for many, the initial reaction will be shock and fear. And to overcome that, you must have trained and trained and trained. Now, crisis can happen at any time, and we were certainly caught by surprise that day in Tunis. But we were able to manage it successfully because we had done the hard work before. We were well trained, we worked effectively as a team, and we trusted each other. Now, hopefully, none of you will experience a crisis as dramatic as this one. But the lessons apply regardless, because whether you are a leader or a team member, what you do before a crisis will set you and your team up for success and will help you manage whatever may come your way. Thank you.